Hello and welcome to the OnPoint Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Thompson with Acceleration Point. And today I get to share with you my friend, my colleague, Wendy Fraser, the head of the Field Medical Center of Excellence at Merck. And what is so exciting about this conversation is that there are not many organizations working at the scale and size that Merck is, with over 20 indications, thousands of medical affairs employees around the globe. And today we're going to peer into how this center of excellence of just 38 people are working to improve the scientific acumen, bring best practices and process to such a large organization in a very consultative way. So join me, and it's time to get on point.
Welcome to OnPoint, the Medical Excellence Podcast, where we talk to pharma leaders about how to build highly effective medical affairs organizations.
All right, Wendy, I am so excited to share this conversation with the medical excellence community. Welcome to the OnPoint Podcast.
Thanks a ton, Scott. Really, truly, I'm really excited to have this conversation.
This is going to be great. So as I was saying in the introduction, I get a chance to talk to medical excellence leaders in all different size organizations. Some of them are growing. Some of them just moved from smaller organizations to big, but I can't think of anyone who has had to scale their medical excellence function quite to the size and complexity of your organization. Maybe just to start, can you give the audience an idea of the complexity and size and scale of the organization you support?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I do think, as I consider the medical excellence colleagues that I have around the world, that it is maybe different here at Merck. So it's good to give that background. So for the medical excellence function within medical affairs at Merck, our responsibility, our accountability, our scope includes global. So we have responsibility for the work of medical affairs around the world. And then we also have responsibility for all of the TAs that are covered by medical affairs at the company. So as you well know, when you consider current inline products as well as pipeline products at Merck, it's a large amount of therapeutic area focus.
So how big is that today? How many is that?
Oh, you know what? That is a great question. And honestly, I'd have to look it up. As I
30?
consider the work of oncology and the expansion that we've seen over the last many years within the company, as well as our dramatic focus within our vaccine and ID space. And then really excitingly at the company over the last 2 years, where you've seen our general medicine and specialty focus increase, I really would have to either send an IM chat to somebody to give me the total of that, or maybe I don't want to know the total, Scott. Maybe I've avoided that number
Why?
on purpose.
Yeah, it's quite complex. How many medical affairs employees generally? Like, about how big of an organization are you supporting?
So medical affairs in total, I believe we're circling around the 3,000 number. But like at any organization, it's somewhat complex how you draw that line. If what we're talking about are those that engage in scientific exchange for the company's behalf, then you're talking at about 1,200 folks. Again, numbers depend on how you decide to pick who you're going to include within the scope, but about, and it's funny, Scott, as I just described that, when I say those that engage in scientific exchange, I think it's really important to say that medical excellence at Merck, we have decided to focus our best practice, our center of excellence work, not on titles, not on roles. It's just become too complex globally within medical affairs, how that is described in different countries and different regions. And instead, we are the Center for Scientific Exchange Excellence, because we find in 2024 going into 2025, there are many roles that are engaging in scientific exchange, and it's just described differently globally. And so we've just made that change recently, and it's been very well received.
So your organization, it's easily over 20 product teams, 20 areas of focus. It's
Easily.
thousands of employees worldwide. Tell me a little bit more about this focus of Scientific Exchange Center of Excellence. Like, what role does the Center of Excellence play in the day-to-day lives and the work and the strategies of the organization?
Absolutely. So we are the organization within medical affairs at Merck that enables those that engage in scientific exchange on the company's behalf. So when we think about that, we are responsible for driving the scientific acumen of those that engage in scientific exchange. So the traditionally titled Global Scientific Training Organization
Mhm.
is within our group. But then we also have many members within the organization whose sole focus is the how of scientific exchange. How can we best enable the skills and capabilities of those that engage in scientific exchange to make sure that we're doing all that we can to ensure that they do so with excellence? So it's all the same, but of course, different parts of the organization have to really focus on different parts of the scientific exchange universe. And we have those that are focused entirely in TA training, and then those that spend the majority of their focus on how you engage in scientific
Sure.
exchange and how to enable that best.
And so when you think of that how part,
Mhm.
is that both process and skills and technologies? Like what goes into the how?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I love this question. I often say that nobody has a more matrix job within medical affairs than this one. Because I, as the leader of the organization, must have a fabulous cross-functional relationship with all of the points of focus that you just raised. So we do want to enable the teams if it's about upskilling around a technology, if it's upskilling around a process. So, of course, I have partners who focus on what is that technology, what is the process, the content that's created. But it's our role to help enable the teams be as proficient, as efficient as they can in driving excellence. So, all of that, but through cross functional partnerships with the organization, with the other capabilities around all of global affairs.
Got it. Yeah, I often talk about excellence functions, medical excellence function as the machine that builds the machine, right? So there's this
Yeah.
machine that does scientific exchange and they have to do it every day.
Right.
And then it's really hard when you're part of the machine to be able to look at it and work on it to make it more efficient, to make it more capable. So it
Agree.
requires a group over here who can look at it and see opportunities to improve.
And we have the gift, truly the gift of interacting globally with those that are doing it with excellence. And I think at the country level, at the region level, to share those best practices, they don't always have the avenues to do that, right? And how wonderful for us when we see somebody, a team, someone that is doing something exquisitely well to really focus on why that is working so exquisitely well and what can we do to enable others to gain from that. That frankly, if we weren't in touch with all of the different pieces, I don't know that we would be as capable at doing that.
This brings up a really interesting discussion. So you work for the global organization, and there's going to always be this balance between this desire for global consistency. Like, here's the playbook. We will all
Right.
do it this way. But then
Uh,
you're talking about how some teams, some geographies, some TAs might be doing something better. How do you balance this global consistency yet with this local autonomy and local decision making in such a big organization?
so I know that all of those that have had what we would call field experience are going to smile. You actively listen.
Mm,
Um, right. What makes you an amazing MSL also allows you to listen extremely well to those around the world to pivot to meet their needs because you're right. You know, what works in one country, what works in one region, although the base of that success, I do believe can be translated it has to be regionalized. It has to be localized. And the friendships, and I mean that, the friendships that we have around the globe, our partners around the globe that we rely upon to make it relevant at the country level, relevant at the region level. The amount of pre-planning calls that any solid training team does, it almost can't be counted, right? Because you've got to make sure that you're connected at every level to make sure what you're going to bring is regionally relevant, locally relevant. And we spend a lot of our time and our energy doing that.
And now you tell us a little bit how you're spending that time. Like, this is a really big challenge because I think a lot of folks who come into medical excellence in larger organizations, they end up being the tugboat instead of the lighthouse. They end up trying to push, right, people towards like, you must do this versus inspiring of what could be. And I think that they often miss that local friendship, that localization. So what specifically do you do, like plan into your year to make that happen?
Honestly, Scott, I've hired amazing people.
Okay.
Because I think you just nailed it. The ability of my team to inspire a shared vision is once in a lifetime. I mean, I just couldn't be more proud of the team that we've assembled and their ability to inspire this shared vision, because once they go either to a country or to a region, and as you know, globally, it depends. The United States is a country and a region all in one. Or you have regions that, are much more diverse and varied. But if you meet with that organization to form an inspired shared vision of where you're trying to get, they then partner on how we're going to get there. The team has an amazing set of questions that they utilize in order to do a relatively, objective assessment of where are you today? Where do you envision yourself being at the close? And how can we enable you to get from point A to point B and to utilize our expertise where we've seen things that have worked, where we've learned along the way. But really, I do have to give it to the team. It is exactly what you just said. It's inspiring a shared vision and working toward it.
It sounds very consultative versus directive.
So I know that for many members of the team that are going to listen, the fact that you just used consultative is gonna be a major clapping moment. We consult, and I think it gets to the topic for you and I of scale. We cannot do the flip side. We cannot push. We're small, and the organization is very large, and there's a limit to that. So with this inspired vision, this inspired success, how can we support you to get from where you are today to where you want to be? And I think consulting is the right way to think about that.
That's amazing. So if you can, I know there's probably some things that are secrets, but can you share what any of that vision looks like? What are you striving for? What are you trying to build?
Sure. This isn't going to come as a surprise to anybody that is either engaging in scientific exchange or enabling those that are engaging in scientific exchange. We are building the organization of people that give context to those that are making decisions. It really is that simple. Every single thing that we do focuses on the patient, focuses on ensuring patients have what they need when they need it. And for our company, we just want to make sure that we've provided all the necessary context, everything that someone making one of those decisions needs so that they can do it in the most educated way. End of story. Actually, from an inspiring perspective, it's pretty clean. The how is complex, as you and I well know. The machinery is quite complex, as you and I well know. But if you wake up every single day hoping to inform, to make sure that patients have what they need when they need it, it's pretty clean.
That's great. what were some of your big wins? It's the end of the year, right? We're recording this. It's the end of the year. But what were some of the big wins of 2024?
Most of it we've touched on. The team has in fact built an inspired shared vision with the countries and the regions around the world. I feel very strongly that it is shown in the feedback that we receive, that our country partners, our regional partners, felt invited into the process, felt aligned upon the shared vision, and that it is an inspired one. We made real progress this year. As I said, we're a small team,
Okay.
and we made real progress this year. If you think about the number of people focused on this work, and then the number of people where we found impact, and it's a giant leap. So the processes that we've learned, the processes that we've put in place in order to allow a scale from a small group into an extremely large team where we've had impact is absolutely at the top of my list. Couldn't be more
Right.
proud of everybody involved.
How big is this team supporting such a big organization?
So in all, 38.
Okay.
However, there are different pieces focused on different parts. The largest component of the team is the component focused on scientific acumen.
Yep.
You know, it takes one person, a complete deep dive, to be a therapeutic expert in all of the places where Merck is currently working. And so the largest component is that if we think about the team that is focused on enabling of the how we engage in scientific exchange, you're talking about a group at its core of approximately 8 people.
Wow.
Now, I need to be super clear. When I mean that, I mean the group that's building the foundation of that, the group that's building the structure. Exactly. Because of course, our scientific acumen leads are also involved in the execution process. So when I say the number is that tight, I do mean in the building of the scaffolding up.
In addition to your cross-functional partners, right? You've got
Oh
IT,
my God.
you've got business, you've got probably 100 people helping.
Exactly. And we are helping 100, right? So what worked so successfully about our process is through our cross-functional partners and the fabulous relationships that we have with the other capabilities in the organization. If someone would like to borrow the process, how have you rolled this out successfully? How have you integrated this successfully? How have you launched this successfully? Now you have this amazing core group that has really skinned their knees over and over again and can share, this is what we've seen to be successful. This is where we would consult that you do it this way. It's an amazing process.
How do you approach experimentation in such a large organization? You hear of a country or a team that is trying something different, trying something new.
Yeah, I love that.
How do you get involved in that?
So first of all, it's not something that we put up on the wall or in our priorities year by year. It's real. Safe to make a mistake and safe to fail is quite honestly very difficult to live by. If anyone's ever tried it, it can really upset your stomach. Because to say that you're going to do something with a willingness to fail, you need amazing sponsorship by the people that you work for, and I have that. I can't be safe to fail if the team that I'm working for isn't going to accept it, and I'm really lucky. The people that I work for understand and welcome experimentation all the way up to our CEO. Just experimentation is a culture here. Safe to fail is a culture here. We love fail, first attempt in learning. We teach it. So as a team, we rely on one another to keep our necks outstretched. Um, we don't celebrate when things go wrong. We welcome it,
Hmm.
we learn, we stop, we learn what we can, and we go back and we try again. But as a team, we really celebrate one another, putting our necks out to see how it goes. Uh,
Right.
Debrief is not a calendar appointment; it's a real thing. What went well? What are we going to celebrate? What are we going to keep? And then where did we hit a hurdle that maybe we didn't see? And how can we work as a team to bring the hurdle down? Some hurdles are there to stay. How can you potentially make them a tad shorter? And then I feel really, really strongly that it is the process of pilot, launch, roll out.
Okay.
We don't launch, we don't roll out. Without in our world, we must pilot, we do so in an extremely focused way. It's in
Hmm.
a particular demographic, and you name it for me. Either it's going to be in a country, in a TA, or
Right.
right. Like I got to narrow as tight as I can so that we can understand the feedback that we receive to pivot.
Sure.
Uh, but pilot again based on what you learned, launch, roll out.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about when you're making that transition from piloting to launch,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, we've learned, we know what didn't work, we know what does work, we're ready to bring a concept, basically, for lack of a better word, to market, right, to the
Exactly.
masses. Yeah.
No, of course.
How do you launch something consistently around the world with such a small group of people? And how long does that take? What are some of the things that you put in place that have worked really well for you?
I think how long it takes is shocking. And probably if I could speak for everybody in the organization that is at times frustrated with us, time is probably what I would hear back. Because one, when you consider an audience which is global and across therapeutic areas, when you're building, it's complex. It's a little bit easier to build something for a well-known, well-narrowed audience. And
Mhm.
we're building with the end in mind. So even though we're going to pilot in a target audience, doesn't mean that we don't have the end game in mind, which is to say, we are going to at one point take this everywhere, and we have to build with that in mind. Um, I think if I could answer kind of the question behind the question, how do we make
Mhm.
sure from pilot to launch it works? It's understanding how to build advocacy along the way. What we learn through our pilots is what people don't like. What we learn through pilots is the discomfort of change. Our
Mm.
pilots teach us, to be completely honest, Scott, like we're good at this. And so if what we were worried about was the process and the construction of launch, we got it.
Okay.
What we pilot is the culture. What we pilot is the unknown. What we pilot is the resistance to change. And that's the win, right? Listening through your pilot, why don't people want to do this?
Yeah.
What resonates? What is the MSL like? What do they not like? What scares them? What
Yeah.
comforts them? Then once you get the culture of change component, now you're ready
Yeah.
to go.
That's great. So tell me, um, I know you have a very disciplined approach to advisory councils, to having kind of
We
these
do.
standing, and
We
you
do.
have somebody on your team that like focuses on that. You want to just maybe tell everybody a little bit about that process and how it's impacted your growth as a team?
Absolutely. For starters, if you don't have a web in whatever your participant pool is, you're deaf, right? You're tone deaf to the job, to how it's going to land. You're not hearing from those focused on the execution of what you're trying to grow.
Mm.
And by that you're going to fail. Um, I feel strongly if what I just said is the case, and that is the excellence teams know the process and how to build. but it's the culture that'll get you. It's resistance to change and change management that'll stop you at your track. So with that, one particular member of my team has become an expert on community, and he has, as an expert, built communities where we have echo chambers in place, right? So this idea of being able to hear, this idea of not closing down communication, he has us in every nook and cranny of the world listening to openly, what do you need? What's landing? What's not? What word don't you like? What word do you like? If we're saying something that doesn't land, why? What would land better?
Mhm.
He's just and he's done it successfully through every part of medical affairs, meaning, he's got a community within those that are leading. He's got at one level, leaders of leaders. He's got a
Yeah.
community with those that specifically lead medical science liaisons, if that's what you call it at your organization. He's got a
Sure.
community of medical science liaisons, and every step of the way, he's able to pulse. And it has just made us so much more informed. I feel I'm shocked every day at what I believe is a good idea, and that when it's announced, it's not. It still today takes my breath away because I feel like I understand the job. I feel
Yeah.
like
You were
I'm
there.
connected, and
Yeah.
but I'm not. But I'm not. And it's
Yeah.
usually how we start every single phone call. I know nothing. Tell me what you know. Uh, it's been a big change for the organization.
I bet. So I mean, you've been in one form or another, working on this center of excellence for over 15 years. How is it different now than when you started it?
Oh, I love that. Um, the biggest part of my growth throughout my career has been from Donna Holder. And so I just need to say that out loud. Donna
Cool. Let's go.
exposed, yeah, a friend in common. But Donna taught me first how to open my eyes and to never know, because I do know a lot about how the job is executed, but I sure never did it in Japan, and I sure
Mhm.
never did it in China, and I absolutely don't know how to do it in France. So Donna was the first that taught me this idea of counsel, as you just brought up, this
Sure.
idea of creating an ability to listen. And I think the most dramatic change for all medical excellence colleagues around the world has been technology.
Mhm.
I'm sure that some of my colleagues that were trying to do this when we were sending faxes are like laughing out loud at me right now, right? Like, they're like, "Hey, if you think you can't get it figured out, remember when we couldn't talk like you and I are today?
Yeah.
Remember when we had to get on airplanes to know what it looked like to do the job in
Yeah.
France or to do the job in Japan?" And, technology today has allowed my team, this community that I'm describing, think, Scott, of the tools today, the Microsoft platforms, our phones, being able to communicate like this with your in-country and region partners any time of day at times that work for them.
Yeah.
Um, it cannot be compared. How that's made it easier for medical excellence to stay informed, to continue to listen, to not be cut off and toned up from what's happening to the teams. Now, I will say, I think that technology is the plus and the minus here, because I think that technology has also dramatically impacted our teams. Dramatically.
Right.
Uh,
How?
yeah, I mean, right, Scott? Like, dramatically impacted the medical science liaison of today, and things that I didn't experience. It's experiences that I've just not had. Um, and so we've we've got to keep communication open. We've got to stay tied together, because those of us that are leading medical excellence haven't necessarily were post 2020, which forever changed the way that the industry handles technology. And I don't understand it. So I got to rely on those that are doing the job today.
Yeah. So tell me personally as a leader, right? Leading 10, 15 years ago and everything that you learned, like if you could go back and give yourself advice from
Yep.
something that you learned,
Yep.
what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, I think the greatest advice that I could give myself, this might be a personal, is to ask more questions and to understand that often the leaders that I was working amongst also didn't have the answers. I spent so much time in my head thinking that other leaders knew.
Mm,
I assumed they had all the answers. I assumed it. And so I spent too much time working to reach that. And what I should have done is ask the question. And I should have immediately opened up and been vulnerable and been humble. And so
wow.
today, either when I hire or when I work with, when I have someone else on the line in a regional or country role, these are the things that I try to get on the table immediately. There isn't a conversation that I'm not open to having. I don't know it all. I
Wow.
only know what I know. Please ask questions. Please don't waste any time thinking on your own. Gosh, should I know this? Gosh, how do I find it? The work that we're doing is so critical. There just isn't time for that, Scott. And I
Wow.
beg the people around me not to spend any time wondering. Please ask. Please ask.
Yeah.
It's just too
Yeah.
critical. And there are patients on the other end of what you and I do. And to waste a minute of anybody's time, we just don't have it.
Yeah. That kind of being vulnerable, but
Yeah.
on the other side of it, you're right. I think that a lot of times we make assumptions that leaders have already spent time thinking through something,
Right.
where
Right.
what they really need from any partner is to think through it together.
It's a partnership. And I wish I
Yeah.
would have been taught that earlier in my career because as I consider my leadership team, they are my strongest partners in thought. And I try to teach that to everybody that I work with today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So looking ahead the next
Yep.
5 years,
Yep.
how is medical affairs and hence the role of the COE? What does the Center of Excellence need to do different? How do you see its role evolving in the next 5 years?
I feel really strongly that core of what has made scientific exchange valuable and foundational to success is going to remain. It's going to remain.
Yes.
Peer-to-peer discussions around the contextualization of science is going to remain. I feel in the next 5 years, the how is changing and it's going to continue to change. Still going to be contextualization. We just may change the way that we do it. The same way that you and
Sure.
I are not sitting in a recording booth right now.
Yeah.
I'm at my house. You're at your house. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's so important for everyone interested in medical affairs that you and I have a responsibility to make it clear. Connecting with peers to share contextualization of science is here to stay. You and I just talked about needing a thought partner, and those that make decisions in healthcare need thought partners, and that's not going to change. I hope in the next 5 years, we see the delivery of information
Hmm.
become easier for the MSL, where I
Right.
see potentially the biggest change, the most dramatic change is making the life of the MSL easier.
Yeah.
MSLs today are absolutely burdened. They're burdened with needing to be scientific experts and all of the work that comes with that, needing to be real rapport experts and all the complication that comes with that. I'm hoping over the next 5 years, we will see at their fingertips a
Wow.
faster prep, an easier prep, you and I were doing hilarious amounts of, even early in our career, not even the Google work, like we didn't even have that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but gosh, when I think about how easy it is for me to be smart in other parts of my life, we've just got to make it easier on MSLs. We've got to put information at MSLs' fingertips faster. We've got to make MSLs getting to choose the content that they want, and only the content that they want, easier and faster. We've got to make the narrative build easier on our MSLs. We've got
Yeah.
to make the admin on our MSLs easier. We have to. I'm sure everyone just took a deep breath. Admin for every single MSL is overly burdensome. We've got to fix it. It's funny, right, Scott? I don't see the future of the value component of MSLs being the dramatic change. I hope what we find is the enabling of the MSL getting bigger, better, stronger, faster. That's what I hope.
So, Wendy, because we will, right? That between technology and process and alignment and training, we will be able to just talk into our phone and the CRM will fill itself in.
Right.
I'll be able to say, I'm meeting with Wendy. You'll go, oh, here's the materials you're probably going to need based on where you are in the conversation.
Precisely.
Right. We'll have AI where you can look up insights and have it contextualize and tell you, here's how to talk. All of that will come.
I believe.
As that time, effort, and mind share is relieved in those that are engaged in scientific exchange, what do we need to fill that space with? Because I find if we don't have something to fill that space with, we keep going back to the things that we knew how to do and keep trying to. So what do we fill that space with?
Absolutely. I feel, although I honestly feel MSLs can speak to this just a little bit better. In my own life, it was always a frustration that I only had so much time to interact with so many. And probably future leaders future stars, up and comers, right? We all have different terminology to describe those that will need to make decisions for large groups of people in the future. I think there was always an end to that because I only had so much bandwidth. If you could have made me better, smarter, faster, and more efficient in my ability to manage numbers, I could have increased my reach. I could have taken on more people that would have benefited from the type of context that we're talking about to make better decisions. I always felt that the limit was my time. It wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't what I hoped to do. It wasn't who I wanted to be. It was my time. I could only get to so many people and manage that successfully. If I overreached, right, I would begin to do poorly by some of my other relationships. And that just was wrong. I couldn't build rapport with that many. So hopefully if you make people more agile, because look at the level of information that is coming at HCPs today. Look at it. I feel really strongly that we as a pharma group have got to focus on contextualizing for these folks because they're seeing my mom and my dad. And I want them to have all the information that they need, and I need it to be right.
Yeah. And as we see in the digital world, the barrier of entry to get content in front of HCPs is gone way down. And so having trusted partners, relationships to discuss it and to contextualize, validate.
Do I understand? Am I interpreting this correctly? I've heard this and this. Can you help me with the context of both of the things that I'm hearing? You're so right. There was a day in pharma that delivery of data was the role, right? We owned the right and the access to data. Those days are over because thank goodness, right? The dissemination of data, to your point, has come down. It's not only in ivory towers. Everybody has information available to them. And so the relationships that allow you to contextualize that information to make the right decision for patients is business critical.
Amazing.
That's my
Wendy,
hope.
this was one of 1,000 amazing conversations. I really appreciate you sharing that with such a much broader medical excellence community. If people wanted to continue to connect with you and learn from you, is following you and joining you on LinkedIn a
Please,
good option?
please.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And then,
like I was
and then
saying, I don't, I was going to say, I think we demonstrate consistently through maps. We demonstrate consistently through the types of workshops that we lead through maps. We say out loud, we don't know it all. And we're only as strong as the collective group. And so would love to be able to idea share, to best practice share, to learn from others how best to continue this very important work.
awesome. Well, I will include your contact information and LinkedIn in the show notes. And do you want to just maybe really quick tell everybody what you're going to be sharing at MAPS in March?
So excitingly, I personally will be involved in talking on the behalf of the field medical working group. So it's not my opinion, it's the group's opinion on this important concept about AI and field medical.
Awesome.
And again, some of the things that you and I have discussed today, it'll be an open sharing forum and hoping that everybody can give their thoughts as well so we can all learn from one another.
Wonderful. Looking forward to being there. And we'll be doing the digital ready MSL, really starting to look at what are the skills that people can be building now, even if your organization hasn't deployed that technology yet. Because I think as we were talking about, there's some things that we just need to get good at because the technology will enable us when we get it.
I love that. I love that. And I think enable is going to be the word over the next 5 years. How can we enable?
Wonderful, Wendy. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your expertise with all of us.
Scott, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.